Welcome to We the World and our 2025 MLK Manifesting the Dream event. Each year we take time to remember Martin Luther King Jr. and his beloved community. And each year we are thrilled to feature the many people and organizations who have taken action to be of service, not only in January and February, but all year round. We at We the World welcome you to take action and be of service at we.net/MLK from January 15th to February 28th. Please join us in being a part of this annual celebration and consider being of service in your communities and with us. Of course, donations are very appreciated at we.net/donate. My name is Jana Larsen, and I am the HR and Deputy Director of We the World. Welcome to our show today. Krueger is a pragmatic futurist, transformative leader, and best-selling author dedicated to advancing peace and peak performance across education, business, and global initiatives. With over 45 years of experience, he has worked with schools, universities, corporations, and communities worldwide, integrating wisdom, innovation, and practical strategies to inspire meaningful change. As the inspired and founder of the Peace Lab and the Peacemakers Circles Network, Kurt fosters personal and collective growth through interactive engagement, resilience building, and action driven leadership. With a global reach and an authentic, heart centered approach, Kurt is known for his ability to teach, inspire, and connect diverse communities. His work is rooted in actionable insights, helping individuals and organizations cultivate peace, resilience, and success. A dynamic speaker and educator, Kurt's unique blend of insight, playfulness, and impact driven leadership makes his work both profound and memorable. And now, Kurt, I pass the talking stick to you.
Well, thank you. We welcome you all with great respect and love. It's President's Day in America, and wherever you are, we honor you as the president of your life. To receive the most from this program, however, we want to be able to use the most modern practices that we can. And one of them is that we're going to offer you periodic opportunities to experience a simple and yet effectively profound experience of openness through a mild mini meditation, and then to energize the body once we've been sitting so long, we'll do an activator. So we will be separating the program into little parts of bliss. Not that you're not going to have bliss in all the other sections, but this is about mini dosing. And so we're going to give you a mini dose of this peaceful mind. How are you ready to breathe in? As we breathe in, thank you for peace in everything. And as we breathe out, we say everything as peace. Notice how slowly it is. Thank you for peace in everything. Everything as peace. Thank you for peace in everything. It's beautiful to see people doing it. Everything as peace. So 3 simple times periodically through the day gives us that reminder of what we wish to experience all the time in whatever we do. So this can happen any time of your day. Just apply it to that. Now I get to introduce the incredible guests that we have that are awesome experts at creating these miracles of microdosing. We have Dr. David, David, Daniel Rieders. Daniel's not only an MD, but he's a medical shaman, a cardiologist with over 4 decades. You can see how young he is. He continues to actively work with tech and traditional precision medicine. He actively practices energy and soul medicine. Who's heard of soul medicine? He actively he's a registered cardiologist and educator on subjects as peptides and regenerative medicine and complex chronic ill people. He also enjoys mentoring and coaching medical physicians and healers in psychedelic medicine, both nationally and internationally. I know him because of his involvement with the Peace Lab, where he helped us all produce great programs for many different platforms on creating peace in everything. Everything is peace. He's got so much more. He works in Silicon Valley in California, and he's a shaman who's trained in the Andes, and he's worked with so many people around the world on all levels of living. And I got to meet him, and you would never know that he's basically pretty blind, but he's not blind in what he sees. And he doesn't look blind nor act blind when you meet him. So you'll get that magic. But he got to learn about Jordan Gruber after meeting him at a ecstatic dance gathering in Silicon Valley. And they both got to be friends because of their mutual work in this field. However, Jordan's a lot different in so many ways than Daniel. He's a JD, Juris Doctor. So he's a lawyer. He's a CEO of the Active Early Online Enlightenment.com community, and as a JD from the University of Virginia School of Law, and both a philosophy BA and public policy MA from Binghamton University. After practicing law at Cooley Goodward and focusing on the IP law at NASA's Moffett Field and working at Gnosis magazine, a highly respected journal of the Western esoteric tradition, what emerges was the practical wordsmith. He's a writer, ghostwriter, editor. He's got so much in his little toolbox. You're going to experience on how to use the tools that he's also learned and partnered with Jim Fadiman, who's the early proponent of microdosing and so on. There's so much more I could say, but that's in the write-up that you'll be able to read in the program. So please welcome with great round of applause, Daniel and Jordan. Jordan, you're going to be going first. GFI, go for it.
Thank you so much, Kirk, and thank you, Jana. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. I'm excited, and it's really an amazing stage. I can already feel it. So this talk is called Microdosing for Cultural Transformation, Less is More, and Naturally Healing Ourselves and the Planet. And it's really about the promise and potential of psychedelic microdosing as described in my new book, which I am shamelessly plugging, that comes out tomorrow, February 18th. And I've co-authored this book, as Kurt mentioned, with James Fadiman. James Fadiman is universally regarded as the godfather or father or initial developer and the world's leading authority really on psychedelic microdosing. And I partnered with him, and this book is coming out after Jim has been working on this for 15 years. So we're going to talk a little bit about the larger historical grand scheme we seem to find ourselves in at these times with respect to microdosing and the timeliness and power with which it comes to us. And The way I'm seeing it is that it's a gift. So I'm going to take you through what microdosing is, what the wide-ranging benefits seem to encompass. We'll talk just a little bit about the science and the history, and then we'll summarize it all before we get to questions. And Dr. Daniel Rieders is also going to be adding his comments and his ideas and his summaries. So let's get right into it. What is psychedelic microdosing? The first thing to understand is that we're working with very small amounts of these substances, 1/10 to 1/20th of the standard recreational dose that people would have been taking in the 60s and beyond. Keep in mind that something like 40 million Americans have actually tried LSD. And the substances that are used for this, well, there's a variety of substances. We're mainly going to stick with the idea of the classic psychedelics, which are psilocybin-containing mushrooms and LSD. There are other substances that are used, and a couple of them are even fully legal, but for simplicity's sake, because most of what we know about psychedelic microdosing is in terms of LSD and psilocybin-containing mushrooms, we're just going to speak about those. So the first thing to understand is that when you take a dose of these substances at this very low 1/10 to 1/20th level, the term we used to use was subperceptual. But it's not completely that you don't know. You know you're on a little bit of something, just like I know that I'm on a little bit of coffee. But the amount is so low that you don't have any psychedelic mentations, any psychedelic visualizations. No giant anacondas are going to eat you. There aren't going to be any lines wavering and wiggling. It's going to be pretty normal. And in fact, one reframe we have now is that the type of psychedelic dose that people have taken and that you've heard about and read about, and Ken Kesey and all of these folks, that's really kind of an overdose. That's at a level that's so great that for many people in many situations, it can become at least uncomfortable for part of it. And that's an intense thing if you take a full dose of a psychedelic. But we're not talking about that. Again, we're talking where you stay below the threshold of an actual psychedelic experience. So you're not seeing the visuals, you retain your ordinary consciousness. You don't have any qualms about having your ordinary day. Nobody even really knows that you're on anything. There was a book written by Ayelet Waldman called A Really Good Day, and her point was that at the end of a day when you're microdosing, very often you have completely forgotten that you were even on something. And at the end of the day, you just go, well, that was a really good day. Now, another very important thing is that starting in 2010, when Jim Fadiman, my partner, started working with this, he devised the first microdosing protocol for modern microdosing. And it's important to also realize that before modern microdosing, indigenous peoples throughout the world have been taking both large and small doses of psychedelics for things like healing, for things like better acuity during hunting. So when I say modern microdosing, I'm now referring to what's come into existence since Jim started training his attention on all this in 2010. The thing about this is that before Jim Fadiman started doing this, he had been a psychedelic researcher for 45 years, starting in 1961, actually, when his former college teacher, Ram Dass, or Richard Alpert, gave him his first dose of psilocybin in a Paris cafe. So again, no visuals, you're not getting high, you're not intoxicated, you're not inebriated. None of that is happening. And you're doing this on a conservative schedule or protocol. And so the Fadiman protocol or schedule is the most conservative, and that's what we always recommend. On the Fadiman protocol, on day one, you take the substance, day two, you're off, and day three, you're off, and then day four, you're back on. People find very often that the second day, the day after they've taken the substance, is their very best day. And we even have research that shows that that's the day when people have the best sleep. And so after you've done this for maybe 6 or 8 weeks, day one you're on, day four you're on, day seven you're on, then we recommend taking a couple of weeks off so that you can fully reset and get back to ground zero. So there are a couple of concerns and controversies. I'll just raise them briefly. one concern that we've had for a while, but has pretty much been to rest, is that this is just a placebo effect, that the amount of psychedelics is so small here at this 1/10 to 1/20th dose that nothing real is happening. We have new research that shows that's not so, and we also have some interesting similarities between blood flow scans and brain scans and something called BDNF, which is a marker of the brain. And all of these show that the low doses, these microdoses, produce a similar signal, but at a much lower amplitude than the high doses. And we have other reasons for saying that we don't really have to talk about whether or not it's a placebo. And to be upfront with you, another concern that is sometimes raised is that there is what is now a theoretical model. It's a pharmacology model. And at this point, it's still theoretical that microdosing could possibly cause heart valve thickening. So far, we haven't actually seen any cases of this happening. There's some substantial differences between some of the studies where this sort of thing happened and the way microdosing directly works with the brain and the serotonin receptors. And again, so far we haven't really seen this as being a real problem, but this has been raised because obviously we don't have very long-term results on what microdosing is and how safe it is. Another question that for a lot of people is the legality. Is the legality an issue? And the answer is yes. In the United States, most of these substances, although not all, are still federally prohibited class Schedule 1 substances. You're not really allowed to have them. But this differs by state. Some states like Colorado and Oregon and parts of California have already decriminalized these substances, although not made them fully legal. And what we're finding in the real world is that even though these substances are illegal to possess, it's not a priority at all for law enforcement. It's just not something they're interested in. And then so a lot of people say, well, okay, but where am I going to find any of these things? How am I going to get any hold of any of these substances? And we tell people it's really a combination of three things. The first is that psilocybin-containing mushrooms are now relatively easy to grow at home. It's legal to buy a grow kit. It's legal to buy spores, and you can make them at home and you become your own trusted source. A second point is that there are a couple of substances that we talk about in the book that are not actually illegal. One of them, for example, being the vine component of what's called ayahuasca. In ayahuasca, you mix two things, a vine and a DMT containing component. But what we found is that just the vine component of ayahuasca, which is legal, seems to work pretty well for microdosing. But realistically, for most people who are interested in this, what they'll do is they'll either ask the young people in their life if they know anyone who can get them to a trusted source, or they'll just start hanging out at local psychedelic societies and clubs and meetups. If you go online and look for the psychedelic society or club or meetup group near you, there are hundreds. I think it's actually at least in the thousands now across the globe. Many states have these, a lot of cities have these. And if you start spending some time with people who are in the know and who are, open to this, it's not that hard for most people. We haven't yet found anyone who, after we told us to, and who gave it a good go, wasn't able to find what they were looking for. Okay, so why are we doing all this? Why would anybody be taking these micro doses, this 1/10 to 1/20th amount of psychedelics? What we're seeing is three main classes of benefits. The first class of benefit is the healing of physical and mental medical conditions. And I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about what that includes. The second main benefit is that we see enhanced performance. And this is from art and poetry and writing to coding and math to physical endeavors like sports and martial arts, long distance running, where we're now told that it's very well known that microdosing makes a real difference, and even all the way up to sexual relations. Microdosing at this low level with the conservative protocol, with taking time off, seems to do wonders for performance in a wide variety of ways. And then the third type of benefit is that you will experience yourself as having more interpersonal and intrapersonal communication. So the intrapersonal is the idea that everybody has different subpersonalities or selves or parts of who they are. Jim Fadiman and I take this pretty seriously, and we wrote a book in 2020 called Your Symphony of Selves. And we find that when people understand that everyone they know has these different parts or subpersonalities that sometimes are in agreement, that sometimes do things that the other parts of you don't like, it's a lot easier to live your life and to make things work well. And at the same time, when you realize that the people in your life also have these different parts or selves, then you're much less likely to react to someone doing something that you don't like because you realize it's only part of them. It really is a big window for compassion for people. So again, we have physical and mental health conditions or benefit, and we'll get to those in a second. We have enhanced performance in wellness, flow, writing, art, creativity, painting, volleyball, long distance running. And I actually expect that you're going to see people who are interested in every type of artistic and creative endeavor and every type of physical activity and sport. You will see them, people on the cutting edge, looking to microdosing to enhance their performance in all of these things. And finally, you're more aware of your own selves and who you are. You're able to be in the right mind at the right time more often. In your Symphony of Selves, we define mental health as being in the right mind at the right time. And you'll also be able to interact and see the selves and the people in your world, the people you're working with, the people you love, and have a better time with them. So I want to go for a second now to the physical and mental health conditions. In the book, in chapter 4, we list the big 6. These are notable conditions that we think everybody should know about where microdosing makes a big impact. And there are many results so far. One of those is ADHD. Another is depression, including treatment-resistant depression. Another is long COVID. We have 5 reports in the book on long COVID that are well worth reading. Another is tapering or tapering off of pharmaceuticals. If you're on a pharmaceutical antidepressant or some other drug, you can't stop right at once. Everyone knows this or should know this. You need to work with your provider to go off slowly. But people who want to taper off of their pharmaceuticals find that when they're supported by microdosing, that they are a lot. It's a lot easier for them to do. And in some cases, people eventually entirely let go of the pharmaceuticals and may or may not still keep microdosing. Another is pain. Chronic pain is one of the big 6. And finally, we have a section on women's health in the book reporting brand new research from a survey done with hundreds of mothers who were on mushrooms. It's called the Mothers of the Mushroom Survey, when they were pregnant, when they were breastfeeding, when they were early parenting. And even though some of these women had small problems, if you look at the 10 pages of reports, and this information is now online elsewhere, there's no question that in terms of postpartum depression and things as prosaic as latching mechanics and parenting, that these women found it just really amazing. So the book itself contains an A to Z list of 35 conditions, mental and health conditions that in some cases we only have one instance. We call it a case study. In other cases, it's incredibly well established at this point with all of our reporting and with some of the science that has happened. So I'm just going to read you A through E. Here we go. It's anorexia, anxiety, asthma relief, autism, that's Asperger's high functioning, as well as severe autism with children, binge eating, bipolar disorder, body weight issues, cannabis, marijuana, reduction or quitting, cerebral palsy, cluster headaches, color blindness, red green, the common cold, perpetual dizziness, eczema, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and epilepsy. So we have interesting things to suggest for people who have any of these, and then the rest of the alphabet. And one way to think of the book is as sort of a sumptuous buffet of possibilities. We're of course not saying this is going to work for everyone. Everyone is different. There's many different factors concerned, but we have had some amazing reports in all of these different areas. And then the question naturally arises, how does it do this? How can small doses of these classic psychedelics and a few other substances have such a wide range of benefits? And in fact, one of the leading psychedelic authorities is a guy named David Nutt out of England. And at the time when there were 15 things we were saying it was helpful for, he was saying things like, well, anytime that somebody says something is good for all these things, then I become inherently suspicious. So now we're up to 35 or 40 things. And what we're saying is that there are other things in your life that actually have very broad spread benefits to almost anything that's going on with you. For example, getting enough sleep affects everything. Getting adequate hydration and adequate food affects everything in your life and makes it better. Getting enough exercise really makes everything in your life better. And learning how to regulate, like Kurt was talking about with the peace practice, learning how to bring together your parasympathetic and sympathetic systems, learning how to just be able to be peaceful and at calm in real time, no matter what's going on, that helps everything. The question, though, is still, how does this work? What's going on? So there's at least three big factors that we know for certain microdosing impacts. One of these, you may have heard this term, is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to change and to rewire itself, and for neurons and populations of neurons to connect differently. So you have a little bit more freedom. You're a little bit less stuck where you're normally stuck in what we sometimes call the default mode network. You're actually able to make new connections, and you're able to let go of things. You're able to let go of bad habits. You're able to let go of things that are bothering you. The second thing that microdosing provides is anti-inflammatory effects. As it happens, the classic psychedelics are powerful anti-inflammatories. So, and there's new evidence showing that inflammation is related to a whole bunch of neuropsychiatric diseases. So when you're not as inflamed, you start feeling better. And when you're feeling better, generally speaking, things are able to heal better. You're able to stay focused and in flow and have greater performance. Less inflammation is always a good thing. And then finally, microdosing returns us to a state of equilibrium or homeostasis. One of the frequent comments that we hear from people after they start microdosing is they say, I'm back. Like the sense of self that had been depressed or that, there was too much pain. A lot of that lifts and they find themselves returning to a core vital part of who they are that they had been missing for a long time in their life. And the other great advantage of microdosing is because it goes very slow. Again, you're having these doses that you barely notice, but it's over time. So you learn over time what it's like to have this feeling of neuroplasticity, what it's like to feel a little bit better because of the anti-inflammatory effect, what it's like to be in homeostasis and to be in the parts of you that you like the best and that other people like the best. So you have a lot of time to practice this as opposed to taking a large dose of psychedelics and you may or may not have huge breakthroughs and then it's days to recover. So this isn't that. This is a very slow and methodical, but very real way of feeling better, of performing better, of feeling like more of who you are, of being able to love the people in your life more without a lot of difficulty. And one of the amazing things is that we'll find that people who microdose for one thing, let's say it's depression, we'll find that they're automatically making better choices about diet, or they're not drinking as much alcohol, or they're automatically wanting to exercise more, or put their phone down and spend more time with the people in their life. So it's just kind of this systemic overall healing that people experience. So those are the benefits, and that's roughly how we're feeling that it works. a lot of what we know comes from what we're calling real world evidence or reports that Jim Fadiman and other people have now been collecting for 15 years. We're calling it real world evidence or participatory citizen science. And we have thousands of reports, and that's really the main part of what the book does. But at the same time, there's more and more scientific evidence along the lines of how it's helping specific things and how it really isn't a placebo and so on. So the book brings together everything we know from so-called real science and also all of this real world evidence. And these stories really just give you just profound insight into the kind of benefits that people are experiencing. And in fact, we're going to go through the history just briefly now. It really all started with the stories. In 2009, Jim Fadiman, after 45 years in the psychedelic academic world already and being one of the most trusted people in the world, he heard about psychedelic microdosing from a guy named Bob Forte at a diner in Santa Cruz, at a diner in Santa Cruz, California. Jim had spent his whole life focusing on the big doses, not small doses, and he had no interest, but his curiosity was piqued, and he started asking people in Santa Cruz, and where he and I both live in Menlo Park, if they had any experience or if they'd try it, and to get him some reports. And then he was giving a talk about what he was learning, and some guy raised his hand and said, I would like to anonymously send microdoses to people around the country with a notebook and a pen and a self-returned envelope and have them send you reports. And then that started happening. And then eventually reporters started coming to Jim and asking him about what they had heard about people in Silicon Valley who were now coding and using microdosing for coding and to kind of keep up with everybody else. So Jim gave some of these interviews, places like Forbes and Wired magazine, and that built the signal. So starting in 2010, the signal started building and it started getting stronger and stronger all the way up to Ayelet Waldman's book, and then Michael Pollan in How to Change Your Mind actually interviewed Jim, and in the Netflix special in the first episode, you'll see a whole bunch of interviews with Jim about microdosing and how this worked. So what we have now in the form of this book is the most coherent and strongest and clearest signal that we've ever had for microdosing after 15 years. And so the history is that there's been this virtuous cycle, this positive feedback loop where people hear about it and they try it and they find that it's really making a big difference in their life. And that, it's really been a great opportunity for humanity to heal, to enhance, to connect, and to transform us individually in a very effective way that there's very little risk. I mean, the reward to risk ratio is very low. Even if you take a full dose of psychedelics, they're physiologically safe. But at this very small level, we've seen pretty much virtually no overreactions or problems. And while we're always told, and we always say that if you have things like schizophrenia and bipolar in your background, we actually don't have any real world evidence or in any cases of someone with these conditions or family taking a microdose and completely, losing it, basically. So the way I'm seeing this now is that these plant medicines and their analogs like LSD are really tremendous, powerful healing and performance tools. And they're coming to us at a time when, well, as you probably know, since the pandemic, there's more depression, there's more ADHD. The list of mental and physical conditions, including long COVID, is really rising tremendously. And what we're getting now, basically, from the planet, from Earth, from Gaia, is this gift of using these very low doses of these substances that have virtually no side effects, that bring such a broad response of healing and enhancement effects on people. And while in a way it almost seems too good to be true after having spent pretty much every day of the last 4 years focusing on this and putting together this book, even up to the last second, with our publisher and editor saying, no, you can't put anything else in. Things kept coming up that we just had to have in the book. And that's how it kind of feels. The idea of microdosing is pretty widespread. We believe there's millions of people around the world doing it. And this is a time when people can take, stock about whether this is the kind of thing that might lead to all of us being healthier and happier and more able to bring about the things that mean the most to us, including, of course, peace and just creating a better world. Thank you.
It looks like it's time for us to be able to get up and at 'em. If you will, please, if you can, stand up, and we're going to do something called a cross crawl movement. The cross crawl movement is taking your right knee or left knee to your opposite elbow and breathing out and then breathing in, breathing out and breathing in, breathing out and breathing in, breathing out and breathing in. And this is simple, and it gives the cross crawl effect, balances the neocortex. The whole brain is being activated. That short little time, which usually is going to be about 15 to 30 seconds that we do this, and it should be done every 20 minutes as an adult and 15 minutes as somebody who's a youth. Because the attention span, the need to be able to move is different with age. And once we do this, we're ready to listen. And so we get to listen to Daniel Rieders sharing of his experience, both as a practitioner and a guide. Thank you. Daniel?
Hello, everybody. Kurt, did you do your cross crawl yet?
Yeah, he just did it.
Okay, great. So first of all, I'd like to just do some disclosures. And the first disclosure is that Jordan is the expert here. He's done the research, and so this is, his Eve before his book comes out, which we think may be a very important book. So hats off and all the applause and accolade for Jordan. The second thing is, according to the DEA website, LSD and psilocybin are Schedule 1, which means that what they say on their website is that there's no medical use and there's a high addictive potential for these substances. And I'm a practicing cardiologist and precision medical doctor, and I have a DEA license, which I use every day. And so for me, I cannot advocate, according to my licensure, the use of these substances. And even if they're legal in states, the DEA is a federal thing. And even in states where it's been decriminalized, it's still a Schedule 1 for licensed practitioners. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of the political stance of the federal government. So just a few comments. The way pharmaceuticals are brought to market, I understand it may even be like $1 billion to bring a new drug to market these days, just expense for a pharmaceutical company. They do the bench work, they look at their things like the effect on the cardiac rhythms, which I'm an expert in, and they then do these different phase clinical trials, and then eventually it gets this DEA endorsement and FDA endorsement, and then they come onto the market. And usually they come on as normal, like a drug name instead of a generic name, and the cost is more. And then the real medicine research comes in, because they have to follow how these pharmaceuticals actually affect human beings in the real world, not in um, like drug-sponsored areas. And even with the psychedelics, we all want them to work. So we have this inner bias. And so there's ways to design studies for that. But the potent part of this is the real-world experience. For a long time, I was a consultant to the LA coroner's office, which is the biggest coroner's office in the planet, and I've actually presented at international conferences with them in my previous life. And so we see some of these recalls and world life things that happen. Now, the science with microdosing is the opposite. It's upside down. We are learning about these through real world experience, which is extremely potent and important information and guides for us. So it's been flipped the other way. And unless there's something that comes out new, they're here to stay and will be here for, you know, long past any of us here. Um, and so they're going to be around, and I would just urge that we, you know, responsibly track what they're doing to the body and the health. Um, and so as a integrative, holistic, whatever you want to call it, practitioners, I choose not to use words that people do not understand and have to look up. So I would just like to say that this, from the real world experience, these appear to be extremely low, or I wouldn't say no risk, but very close to that, you know, not dangerous, not causing organ toxicity that we know. You know, there was a theory about a serotonin producing tumor called a carcinoid, which could cause pulmonary valve disorders. We haven't seen those. So these are a very low risk. Nothing's no risk. And and I've seen amazing human lives changed in terms of, you know, how individual people have taken a drastic turn in their life for the better, where all of a sudden where they were failing at life and not happy are now happy. They're doing all of the things that Jordan talked about in their lives, connecting with other humans in productive ways. And so I would say this is a peace transformative opportunity for the planet that looks super good. And it's just the data is going to keep coming out. It's a tidal wave. This book that Jordan and Jim wrote is an important book. I've read through it. It's amazing and well written. I always like to recommend well written books. And as a precision medicine doctor, I look at things like getting people to sleep, to eat well, you know, clean, non-toxic food, water, air, and look at their biochemistry in a precision way. There's ways we can test a lot of that now where we couldn't do it before, and just use, you know, decisions based upon the best medical evidence, which isn't always a big clinical trial. It's just the best we have in the field of cardiac electrophysiology, which I've been doing for 4 decades. Plus, a lot of times we would do things off label, and we would do things with just because it was a brand new field when I came into it. No one was doing it, and now it's a very important part of medicine, and it's been that way for quite a while. We would get together, we would seek out the best new technology and just do things and work inside the heart. So some of the most dangerous work in all of medicine. And so all I'm saying is that, you know, science is science, and as a practitioner, we always use the best information we have, all the tools we have to make people better. And so I would just go ahead and endorse right now Jordan and all the excellent work he's done with James um, and just move forward. So I think that's all I have to say at the moment.
Thank you, Daniel.
Well, I really appreciate that, Daniel. The idea that the experiential medicine is basically what gets to be proven by science, and usually science is behind this experiential medicine that some of us are practicing. That Jordan is mentioning, and finding things that work, and then medicine goes through all of those years or whatever of research to find out how efficacious it is, if it's going to be able to be made into a drug. Because I have to spend $1 billion to bring a quote drug to market, but these drugs won't need $1 billion. These drugs sound like they're very available, that they're very useful in the dosages that are practiced for people who want to explore things outside of the norm. Many people are shy about that, but from what we've heard today from Jordan, there doesn't seem to be any negative side effects. And if there's no negative side effects and you've only heard positive experiences, I'd like to be able to put this in my toolbox for being. I started the Institute of Sports Psychology in 1982. So we've taught elite athletes all over the world to use for athletics, but I'm also dealing with stress management and so on with uh, other organizations and building peace in the world. And this sounds like it's going to bring more joy to people's life in microdosing. And I know for sure, firsthand experience with a guided, let's say, work with microdosing that helped my son stop his addiction to alcohol,
Mm,
ceased his trauma that he had when he was in college that was extremely traumatic, but it actually was an experience that we had in South Africa, of all places, where my wife is from. And he took that along for so many years that got him to be this alcoholic that because of that traumatic experience. But he's clear of it. He is just, today is probably his last day in our home. He's moving out with his girlfriend of a year. A girlfriend for him. I mean, it was like unheard of for years because he was a drinker. And because of microdosing, he got clear of it. So I really think what you're bringing forth, both of you, in the ways that you do it as best you can, this microdosing idea. Thank you.
Kurt, you're welcome. I would like to just be transparent here. I worked on a regular basis with Kurt's son. And my personal bias is that it wasn't the molecule that his son was taking. It was all the love and non-judgmental listening. I did an open communication with his son that brought about the change. That would be my point of view, not necessarily the molecule. The molecule did help. I'm not um, that was something else, but that wasn't the way I was working with his son. I was working with just in terms of just being a coach and all the work and background I have in soul and spiritual medicine was I brought to him on a regular basis, and just having him having a healthy relationship with his son. And I got involved because Kurt asked me to. So I just like to be a little transparent that it was the human being and we are the medicines, and which turned this young man who was on a really bad um, trajectory to now been sober for years and winning and succeeding in his life in every domain.
I'd like to make, can I make 2 points about this? The first is that I don't want to oversell it and say that there's never any negative effects. There are some people who have some stomach upset, and we have ways of dealing with that, or who lose a little sleep. Every now and then you find someone who just doesn't feel right for them. What we tell people in these cases is to cut their dose in half. And if they're still having these effects, cut their dose in half again. And if they're still not liking how they're feeling or what's going on, then microdosing isn't for them. And then the other thing is that on the one hand, for many people, microdosing can act almost like a magic vitamin pill, like exercise or enough sleep. They don't really need to work with anyone. And the point of the book was to tell people everything they might need to know on their own. On the other hand, if you are working with a real presenting problem that you might need a coach for or a therapist for, then those people should work with. And there's plenty of microdosing coaches and plenty of trauma-informed therapists who are working with microdosing. And so there are people who are going to want to work with somebody like Daniel worked with your son, because that's what works best for them. That's what furthers their placebo process. The mind and the body are constantly interacting and expressing genes and what you're eating. And so you want to feel good about how you're going about something. So if you've got something that's really a difficult thing for you, then you very may well want to work with a coach or a therapist, or at least have a friend who's very much in with you and that you're consulting with. And some people like to journal and set up an intention before they do it, and then journal when they're done. We talk a lot about integration, especially in high doses, but in microdosing too. And for other people, they don't really need any of that. They find themselves heading towards homeostasis and equilibrium and less pain or less depression, really just from sticking to the protocol and being conservative with it. So you kind of have both going on.
My take on all of that is beautiful expression, and you're right in regard to having this variety of experience. It's like the varieties of spiritual experience are so vast. With a coach, I just want to prompt that because I've been a coach myself of swimming as sports psychology and all that. But with a coach, it's like a guy who's been there, done that. It's like then Hillary could take you up Everest a lot easier than anybody else once he's done it. But the guy who got to the top was the one who got there first, and he could easily lead people anywhere and everywhere too. Because if you take a wrong step in some ways, you might start to have let's say, a little bit of a tweak of an experience and look at it in a different way. And a coach can offer saying, oh, have you thought that that's actually pointing you in this direction? And that little cue is the cue that allows it to be much more rapid and workable and so on. And yes, thank you.
Kurt, I loved it when you were talking about your son and how he even has a girlfriend now. We have a story in the book. Some of our stories are detailing on for pages of this kid whose life wasn't going anywhere, and he was depressed and he had ADHD and nothing good was happening. And his mother wrote all the reports. And by the end of the story, he's even got a girlfriend and he's moved out of the house and he's happy and he's functioning. And I mean, what we're getting from people is gratitude that there's something that can make a huge difference, even if the science isn't established to the degree we'd like it to be at some point. There's something that thousands and thousands of reports worldwide, including organizations like Microdose.me, which did a survey with 8,000 people, which even involved a control group. And there's lots of information coming out that for some of these things like treatment-resistant depression, this can make a real difference and change people's lives without putting them on a pharmaceutical that they'll have to be on for the rest of their lives. And another similar thing is, and as Daniel said, I'm not a licensed medical anything, and nor am I giving legal advice. I'm not, but I'm letting you know what people have told us, and we keep hearing over and over that it's making a huge difference. I lost
Really,
what I was going to say, but it'll come back.
Norman, I so appreciate this gathering today. You've offered us your knowledge and wisdom, and we're able to now get it out to more people to allow them to make their choices. And the heart expression that we've had allows it to be able to get forth even faster. And
Mhm.
Jana is going to, I think, come on and close this wonderful time off that we've had together. Uh,
Actually, I wanted to ask a couple questions.
Yeah,
okay.
please.
I'm very fascinated with this concept of microdosing too. I took a course. I forget the exact name of the place, but it's something about the Center for Jungian Studies. And this course that I took was about psychedelics and Jungian therapy. And it helped me to realize that the therapy that I had received earlier was very Jungian in its approach, but I could see how the microdosing would have really been very helpful in this therapy, because in this kind of therapy, it was you're getting in touch with your for me it was my soul guide, and so it took for me it was really easy to get into this different state where I could picture this in my mind and have this experience, and I could see how it would really help people who are just um, maybe just resistant to the idea of therapy to begin with. But the idea is that for like those being able to consider different possibilities. So instead of being stuck in a thought process where it just always goes this way in a pessimistic direction, that it would help people to be able to see different possibilities and opportunities, and maybe even help people be more hopeful, which would, of course, be very good for mental health and for being able to, not have problems with addictions. And my other question is that considering that it doesn't take millions of dollars to bring this to market, that it would be maybe something the pharmaceutical industry would not like, that something such as mushrooms, psychedelic psilocybin that you could grow yourself or whatever would, like disrupt the whole hold on, the hold on the money part of it, and benefits for shareholders in drug companies. And is that something that came up in like resistance to the whole idea? I guess I'm addressing that more to Jordan.
Yeah, well, you do see resistance, and we do think that people have a lot of entrenched interests, including the people who only want to talk about high doses. So let me give you an example. In the United States, there's something like 80,000 3-year-olds who are on Adderall. According to the government, it's perfectly fine to give Adderall to a 3-year-old. Adderall has real side effects. It's addictive in the sense that you can't just stop taking it or you get really messed up. And what we're saying is, imagine a world in which maybe the first thing people might try, and we have cases of parents after we say to them, no, we can't recommend you do that, of course, but they go ahead and do it anyway and report back to us. And we have kids just doing so much better, or even the case of autism. We had a dad who wrote to us, his kid was literally banging his head on the floor. And very soon after he started microdosing, that stopped. And now he said his kid takes a microdose. He's older now, maybe once a month, and he finds that it completely resets him and brings him back into sort of who he is and who he wants to be. So I think, yes, this could be a very disruptive technology, as it were, in the health industry. And interestingly, we found consistently that psilocybin containing mushrooms, an extract, of those are better in every way than synthesized psilocybin in a lab. Extracted psilocybin mushrooms has all of these other chemicals in addition to the psilocybin, which converts to something called psilocin in the body, but there's all these other alkaloids and entourage chemicals. And this is how nature evolved. This is how, if you hear Terence McKenna and Dennis McKenna speaking, they have something called the stoned ape theory, which is that primitive hominids were eating mushrooms, and that's maybe how language even evolved in the first place. So we know that synthesized is not as good as natural. One more point I want to make, which is kind of interesting, is that people often ask us about the difference between LSD and psilocybin for these points. And also there are other substances, including some that we don't mention very much, like Amanita muscaria, the red and white Christmas mushroom, which is legal, and a couple of other things. But what we found out, the difference between LSD and psilocybin, when you look at the high dose research, when they've spent a lot, and there isn't really any difference in how people react. But from the experience we get, what we hear is that LSD is kind of a non-specific amplifier. If you're microdosing with LSD, you can kind of turn it to whatever you want to turn it. But if you're working with psilocybin containing mushrooms, they want to teach you. They want to heal you. They want to nudge you to work on your relationships or your health or whatever it is in your life that needs healing. So that's very subjective, and we can't prove that, but a lot of people feel that something about these totally natural plant substances, well, it's a fungi, not a plant, psilocybin, but that really that they do care about you, they do love you, they do want to teach you and give you messages. In fact, I had a terrible problem with the parasite, and I was on a dose of more than a microdose, where I very clearly got tutored by the mushrooms about, you've got this problem, and then I had to look into it, and it took a while. It took a year to handle this problem. But the psilocybin will communicate with you if you're open to it.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's what I sense, that this incredible thing called Gaia, Mother Earth, or the cosmic consciousness, for another word or so also, is guiding us to be able to keep with the nature, keep with the natural, keep with the wholeness of life, rather than this synthesizing down to this little thing and so on and so forth. It's like approaching a society. You can't approach it on one level alone. There's all kinds of levels that we approach a society to change the society, to improve the society. And when we do it with the heart and get heart resonance, doing the same resonance with the mind, and Greg Braden has proved this. He's got a fascinating, great book out that talks about how it can actually open us to, like you were talking about, this wisdom that's available to us. We get these insights more. Why? Because it comes from within. That's why this mantra that we leave people with today is, thank you for peace in everything. And we say in. Why? Once it's inside, once we're experiencing it inside, we can give it outside. And it gets to be as peace, everything as peace. So we breathe in peace in everything, everything as peace. We say, thank you for peace in everything, everything as peace. It's the law of attraction, it's the law of predominant mental impression, it's the law of gratitude. We can say laws all day, but these are the cosmic laws that we're talking about. Not the law that says it's a schedule, what? And you can't say anything about it because it's this schedule. Well, that's a different kind of a law. It's an ego law. That's a control law. That's a governmental law. And is the government always doing things for the benefit of all? We here today are talking about it and enacting it. You've come out with a great book to open people to this, just like these incredible flowers behind me that I took a picture of just up the street from me. These are great, great cactus flowers. And there's so many of them, but it's a microdose of nature. So when we see it, we feel better. Like we see the cosmos with Jana.
What I'd just like to add that this a real life experience we have, keep them coming because that's what happens after drugs are approved, and that's where the potent science is. Do these really work in the real world or not? And we're already bypassed the bench work, which I'm a big proponent. I'm a science nerd, geek person. So we've jumped ahead of that. Um, for no other reason than complex reasons, and that the people, in my experience, tend that are on have had these experiences are not creating wars. They're nicer people. They're easier to relate to. They're open. They're enjoying their lives more instead of the rapid paced life of fast food, rapid life we have in um, America, and particularly in um, California. It gives people a chance to re-establish a relationship with nature, and so people are generally nicer people uh, in general. So that's a real world experience that I've had, which is fairly universal, but not 100%.
That's interesting. And I was wondering if you've noticed, maybe again, this might be more Jordan because he's talked with many people, but I think a lot of people who are depressed and are just stuck in their depression or their rut or whatever it is, they can't even express what makes them feel bad. They're just, and that's what therapy is hopefully for, to identify, well, what's making you feel bad. And I think that if there were something that's helping you feel more willing to, I mean, because something's connected and you can talk about it, like poets and writers, that would be in itself a really spectacular improvement for therapy regimens and such, and could really, help just switch people's mindset from everything is terrible, everything is horrible, I'm never going to have a good day, to, the glass is half full, to, oh, the glass is half empty and there's room for more, because there would be this sense of euphoria, and that things can be better and things will be better. And in just from that effect, it can be a placebo effect, just because you feel better, and so you want to keep that feeling. I don't know. I could be
Thing about that again is that focus. What we focus on is what we get.
right.
It's like we got to the moon because we focused on that. How many thousands of people focused on it? Enough, and we got there and back. And so when we focus on really what we want, we're focusing the ultimate, in my sense, is peace, because love is the only thing that can create peace. And if that's so, peace is even a higher level. That's from a book called Power versus Force. But we look at this, and everybody can now, a takeaway from this program is to be able to write down your vision of peace, your particular vision. My vision is, because I believe total peace is possible, I am called to be peace, exciting in others their vision of peace, resulting in uniting as the force that creating peace in everything, everything is peace. That's my little gift for my vision. What's yours? write it down, and each day you may read it each day before, going to sleep or maybe upon awakening. And then you may even refine it a little bit because you get an insight. And that simple piece allows you to have those insights. The simple focus before you go to sleep allows you to awaken and have an insight about how to create more in your family, within yourself first, of course, and everywhere else. Thank you guys for what a wonderful day we've been able to have. And all these smiles that happen so easily. This is what we get to do. We're microdosing like Johnny Appleseed threw some apple seeds here and threw some apple seeds out there.
Well,
Thank
this
you.
has been wonderful. Jordan, David, Dan, I did it too. Daniel, I don't have my glasses on. Can't we? Do you have any last words you want to leave us with?
Well, just that I think Kurt got it right. With microdosing, you're more able to break out of whatever you're unhappy. You're able to think out of the box. If you're unhappy and you're unfocused and you're not feeling well, if that changes just a little bit, if the default mode network is toned down just a little bit and you're, I would say, able to move into a different part of who you are, that knows that what we're talking about here is possible, and that knows that magic ultimately is real and Gaia is alive, and the planet does want to heal us, and you're able to turn just a little bit towards that, and if you stay focused on that, then the benefits will start accumulating and you'll get into your own positive feedback loop or virtuous cycle, and you'll find you're feeling better and healthier and doing things that you love doing with more focus and more flow, and I feel a lot of things in people's lives can get a lot better without a big hoopla. It's not, you're not having that cosmic experience. In fact, you're not even having the euphoria. Microdoses don't bring you euphoria other than you recognize you're a lot happy and that makes you really euphoric. So you're not getting that stimulated, oh, I'm really high and I'm connected with everything, but you're having these very small doses of, oh, I'm feeling okay. Oh, the world is good. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm more able to, be resilient when the people in my life do something that seems crazy to me. I'm not, I'm doing my Byron Katie thing or whatever. In real time, you're able to just bring it here and live a better life and give more back, which of course is the
Why
real point.
not? Life is to be loved, right?
Absolutely.
Daniel, did you want to say anything or
Um,
go
I
for it?
yeah, I used to have a very active ketamine clinic, and we would give, doses, and I'd love training the people that would be sitting with those other humans, and what you can see is that that's people, for instance, lose anxiety and depression and see what it's like to be a normal human being and how exhausting it's been to live their life with um, their monkey brain running the show instead of them running the show. So this and I do not advocate microdosing ketamine. Uh, and other things I've seen that are just jaw-dropping and amazing, just turnarounds in a very short period of time. People that come in actively suicidal, 30 minutes in, they're laughing and happy, and they get a glimpse of who they really were and where they were disconnected from their life. And the thing about microdosing is you do not need a dramatic experience and can get the same effect, and it goes into this and without all the drama and expense and so forth and so on. So it just reinforces that we're doing this on a much subtler level. Less is more, and when you're on a subtle level, you're not activating your nervous system to be in fear or anxiety. You're relaxed, and these are adaptogens. They help you relax and get into that. And so less is more. It's gentle, it's sweet, it's kind, and that's what I have seen in people that microdose. So so that would be just from a macro to a macro view.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
Good to me. Kurt,
Yeah.
are you ready for us to go out?
This is the peace salute, and everybody gets to be able to see the world as it really is. It's just love. And as we say, Zoom peace, we throw the love out to the world and it creates peace. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love
Well,
you.
thank you, all of you, and thank you, Kurt, for bringing Jordan and Daniel here and for this wonderful event. And also, thank you to Birgit Ben Ely, our wonderful events director, who has brought so many fantastic people to our MLK event. And she's also my tech assistant for today. Thank you to our audience for joining our broadcast today. Remember, please join us and take action to be of service at we.net/MLK, and donations are gratefully appreciated at we.net/donate. And goodbye from all of us at We the World.